Excellent. I'm Kevin Tronkowski. I am the Director of Application Engineering here at Plexxi. Previously was the architect of Plexxi Control, so I've seen the maturation of the product, and luckily now I get to kind of eat my own dog food that we've been building for the past couple years. So what I want to show today is another of our integrations. And this is leading a prototype up to the integration that we're doing with Hortonworks. And what we'd like to do with this integration, or what we are doing with this integration, is showing how we can, in a different way than you saw from the VMware integration, where it was truly automated. I mean, really hands-off automation. Here we're going to give a little bit more flexibility back to the actual Hortonworks admin. So they don't have to be a networking guy, but they can have some inputs into a little bit more how we're going to create that fabric for that workload. And a big thing in that area that we've seen from our customers is keeping that traffic isolated. So we've got a converged network, right? But you know, a lot of times this big data is really a big network hog, and so they want to have some control over in this converged network over their traffic that is running in their Hadoop environment. So I'm not sure. Simon has given us an overview of Hortonworks here. I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with that. Ambari is their management tool. So this is the world that the Hadoop admin, the Hortonworks admin would live in. And just to go back and give us a sense here, we do have 4 nodes in here. He's shown that there are 4 hosts, and they're in various states here. What we were able to do with the first part of the integration.
The fabric, right?
What's that?
I totally congested that.
Yeah,
fabric,
you congested that fabric.
You want to uncongest it?
It doesn't matter.
All right.
So what we were able to do with the integration too, you've seen this display from Simon here, where via the VMware integration, and actually just to let you know, we are actually running this on VMware right now. So it's the same network that Simon showed, but we've layered Hortonworks on top of that. You don't need to do that. You can run bare metal. Most people like to run their environment on bare metal. Perfectly fine. No problem there. We just happen to run it on VMware for convenience to gang up a lot of stuff. But the first thing that we did is the integration was able to capture the nodes that we have in the system, right, from Ambari. So this Plexxi Connect integration is integrated tightly with Ambari. So it's using its REST API to harvest information from the application. And the first thing is just to find out where things are. What are the nodes that are involved? And we brought that back into Plexxi Control. So you can see a network view of where might my host be. Table stakes there. And we can also then go look, let's just take a look here at our visualizer. Just because this is our environment, we, back in the visualizer, have a view of all of the paths that are available. So you can see that from switch 3 to switch 4, right? There are actually 8 wavelengths, 8 paths via wavelengths that we have there, going from switch 4 to switch 3. So we've got a lot of east-west capability here that we can take and carve out for this workload. But how do you want to carve it out for the workload? And maybe you don't. Maybe there's a time of day or a time when you can just let it run converge, but sometimes you might not want to. So let's go back to Ambari, right? And let's take a look through their view system. We've created our integration here. So we've put in their environment the information that they would need to do to be able to take this workload and to configure it. So there's nothing configured right here. We haven't isolated, this workload, have not created it yet. So we're just sitting there on wherever the network is, pushing traffic if we're pushing traffic. But we can go into the Hortonworks admin view of the world and break down some of the services. Obviously, this is a small Hortonworks cluster. We just have some, basic services running on that. Obviously, we've discovered that from our integration, again, from Ambari. And we can take a look at you can run multiple clusters on this. You can either go isolate the fabric or let it be as it's unisolated. And break it down by service, right? So we can take the HDFS traffic, and this is part of our knowledge, is understanding, well, what TCP ports and does HDFS run on? What are the congested things, so we can identify and then path that traffic. HDFS, Yarn, Zookeeper, Ambari, with a couple different options here, right? So we can, let's take the step that someone would want to do. Say, yes, I would like to isolate my Hortonworks fabric on this workload, and let's go include a couple, right? So I'm going to include in this isolation HDFS, let's do Yarn, let's do all of them, right? But within that, let's take the HDFS traffic and let's dedicate that. Let's separate that between the other Hadoop traffic and put it on its own dedicated paths, its own dedicated fabric for just HDFS, right? The other guys will just live on a different dedicated fabric for that traffic. But we can take and give a different priority. So let's take Zookeeper and make that hot, right? We don't get Zookeeper traffic back and forth, we're in a bad way, right? We don't get HDFS traffic back and forth, we're in a bad way also, right? So this is all that the Hortonworks admin really needs to do. They don't need to understand TCAMs. They don't need to actually even understand the various fabrics that they can have with the Plexxi network. Just through their world, they can go here and they can apply it. And then,
is there any feedback mechanism to keep an administrator from just saying they should all be high?
well, yeah, because you can't make everything high, right? So that'll come. This is an early prototype on the integration, but obviously there's going to be more bells and whistles. And Plexxi Control also knows. I mean, it will in itself, in the analysis, say I'm out of paths. I can't do that, right? And it does that transactionally, right? And in a job, so it's either going to work or it's not. So you will always run out. This is kind of a bit of a training issue, and they should understand their workload. So we're going to hit apply, right? Now, what's happening inside, this has got to cook for a second or two here, right? What's happening inside is it is looking for available paths. And you could have other paths. You could have had those vMotion through our affinity model that had taken some of these paths. In my case, I cleaned it out. It's going to go look to see where the path is and where the best path is. This is a very simple network, so we have a lot of direct connections. But in a larger network, we may be able to get isolation, but may not be able to get the most direct path, right? And so those are all trade-offs that you can do. But put that back into the hands of the actual application folk rather than having the administrator in that, rather than having to do that. So let's see how we're doing here. So we're cooking along here. This on the bottom, you can barely see this, but this is our job log. So from Plexxi, from Ambari, right, we've been able to gather the information into Plexxi Connect. Plexxi Connect has been able to go and look at where do these things live, right? So where do my Hortonworks nodes live? Connect was able to learn where the actual services are, right, and the components within those services, and who's talking to who in there. And then we figure out from the network side, and we go and we make a workflow isolation, right? So in this, we're just giving some basic information back to the administrator. Here, we can see we have the different services, right? We can see with HDFS, it's going to be very isolated on its own, right? So we're going to create, a certain path, and we'll take a look at these paths in a second. But we can see we're going from host 5 to host 6, 5 to 7, 5 to 8, 6 to 5, they're going to talk all together. And we've created some pathing information here, right? At this point, we can go back to the visualizer, and we can look at these user-defined paths. Let me go ahead and select all of these, right? And now we can see where are these taken, right? So let's say between switch 4 and switch 2, right? We've now used 2 of the available 10 gig paths that we have. There's 4 available, so there's still a little bit more. We can go over here and actually look at our Plexxi Fabric ingress ports, and we can see here that on switch 1, port 18, going up to the fabric, we have HDFS running from 1 to 4. So we can go back and identify what specific service and what specific component is running in between these. And you can see, very much on all of these, right? We can look for This one here, right? We actually have Zookeeper running between 4 and 2. We can see all of that information. Back in Ambari, we can get some basic statistics information for those. We can also see that back over if we were running some good bit of traffic. We could see that back over in Plexxi Control. So here's just some raw stats that are just kind of going like this. And you can go back and forth to really go ahead and see this, use the visualizer. And this is not an island on its own. We can actually look at the configuration over here in detail. This is a bit more detail on what's actually taking place. So we have a flow entry. So think of this basically as the rule, as the match for our traffic. Here we're going from Ambari, HTTP 8 to 5, the IP address, source port, destination, TCP ports. By the way, all of these other networking characteristics and identifiers are available to do this from the standard Plexxi software. We're just using standard Plexxi software. And then the action here is really just to put this on a path, right? So these are the paths within the network that have been identified just for this traffic. So your other residual traffic is not going to sneak onto these paths, and this traffic is not going to sneak onto other paths that may be used for other services, your standard 3-tier web apps, other services in the environment. If someone really wanted to, here we can look at the paths, right? So we can see here's the path, the description, talking about all the services, source switch, ports, destination ports, status of that. We can go back and we can these coexist together. So this will take a second to load up here, but you can go back into Plexxi Control. You can look at all of the parameters for these paths, and you could, if you had to, modify them. It's not going to break the integration and so forth. Right. So let's take a look at one of these. Right. Oops. There you go. Well, you can see here, right? We've selected this one, IP address, ports, paths, other actions that you could apply, that we could apply some other traffic if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to do some policing on that, networking folks can still go on what was done in the integrations and apply some other networking, more in detailed networking characteristics to that. That is pretty much the demo. It's pretty simple, but it should be pretty simple, right? Really showing that we can create these isolated, separated workflows in our converged fabric from the application layer, not having to know all of the details about networking, but really, apply the network to good avail.